Alright, how's it going, guys? Today we're going to be doing another Nomad survival class build, and this one is going to be on the Divine. The Divine, another unlockable character. Gonna have to purchase them in the store under unlocks, and the Divine is definitely a very strong character. Can't really complain too much about the Divine. Like always, as you go from left to right, the Divine's going to have an increased SP cost, which is going to be 500, which is fair. It's called Imperial Obliteration. Sick name. So you lose control, whatever that means, because you're too overpowered, and damage enemies. You're invincible while you cast, and for a short amount of time after. You can't gain SP while invincible. So basically means like while you're casting, you can't get any more SP because that'd be busted. And all it does when it levels up is it increases the base damage. For the Divine, you have a lot of good choices here, I gotta say. Nomad, still always my favorite. Can't really complain. Gonna give Nomad an 8 to a 10 every single time because the rerolls are so important. The Berserker, double damage. So this is actually one of the classes where I would consider Berserker pretty strong. The reason being, for the most part, you can get out of the way before you take damage. So having that double damage is very, very strong. Poxbringer, so yeah, Berserker, sorry, I'll give it a 7. Poxbringer, I don't think the Poxbringer works very well with this class, specifically because your ability stops you from moving. And so after you cast it, if you add these 6 seconds that it takes for, the damage to go through, you're probably going to be surrounded. So I don't think it's really worth the double damage for this specific class. So Poxbringer, I'm going to give it a 3. The Voidwalker, it has some interesting interactions with this class because, again, you can't move while you cast your spell. But for the second after you cast your spell, you're actually invulnerable, so you don't really have to worry about damage for a second. You can use that to walk through boss abilities and stuff like that. So I don't think the Voidwalker is really necessary here. I do love all the sprites though, gotta say again. But yeah, Voidwalker, another 3. Summoner can work all right with this build. The reason being because you don't move. Again, it all kind of is central around the fact that you can't move while you use your ability. And so having those summons will kind of help you out. So this is the only time I'd give Summoner a 5. Then lastly, we got the Merchant. You can't really, at least as far as I'm aware, you can't double the weapon skill amount of your ability because you're casting it. It's not something that you're sending off or anything like that, right? But the bonus relics are always helpful. The Merchant's weapon skill is strong enough to clear the majority of mobs. So the Merchant, just like Ratfolk Archer and the Cultist, you can go the Merchant and probably assume that you're gonna hit some abilities to clear out the bosses. However, you can actually damage the boss with the Divine, where you can't do that with the Cultist. And the funny thing about the Divine is, since you are invulnerable for about a second after you do your ability, the boss generally ends up standing on top of you and you just walk away. It's really, really funny. But for this one, I think I'll go Berserker just for fun. We'll see if I die. Then we'll do double XP so that we could take a look at some extra things. So that's the ability. It's this white flash, and it does a giant AoE of damage. And the main reason why I don't like this class, I mean, the damage is great and all, but I just hate not being able to move. And it's frustrating because obviously you want to get SP regen. SP regen is going to be very important for this class, but by getting SP regen up, it decreases the amount of time you're able to move. So I would recommend going movement speed for this specific build, because if you don't have movement speed, you're going to be sad. Spectral Sword is very strong on this one. I would definitely recommend leveling up Spectral Sword to level 10 so you get the additional sword, so you'd have 3 casts going off at the same time. So kind of very similar to the Cultist. You should play around having a weapon skill for the bosses. I'm gonna do Icicle Barrage because since I'm not moving, Icicle Barrage is all your abilities still cast. So Ice Cool Barrage is nice because at least when I use my ability, I'll have Ice Cool Barrage going off, right? And since it's in front of me, that means I'll always have a direction that I can run away. Theoretically. Obviously, if there's something that, you know, you can't kill in one shot, you're gonna be sad, but for the most part, I'd say Ice Cool Barrage is pretty nice. But yeah, so for the Divine, I would just focus on getting your SP regen, focus on getting item pickup range. Item pickup range is almost like a 100% requirement because of the low mobility that you have. You can't move. It's sack. It sucks. It's not fun. At least for me. That's like, for some reason, it really bothers me that I'm not able to move. And so since you're limited in where you can move, you want to make sure that you're able to get to all of those experience notes. And the best way to do that is just to make sure that your item pickup range passive is maxed out. So I would say that that is the most important skill outside of SP regen for this build. So yeah, really just a couple of things. SP regen, item pickup range, spectral sword, and then a bossing skill. I personally recommend picking up movement speed so that you're able to get to the boss, you know, and get to all of your drops and stuff like that. And then damage always never a bad pickup here. Remember that if you're playing Berserker, don't worry about HP regen or max HP or anything like that. You're not going to be able to get any HP back, which is sad, but it's just the truth. You'll see though, the Divine is one of the funniest bossing characters, I have to say, especially on death. So the last boss of this map, we're not going to play together, but like in Drain Marsh, gets the abilities of all of the other bosses. And one of the bosses on this map, the third boss, has an ability that shoots laser beams from the side of it. So like whatever direction it's walking, both to the left and the right, it shoots out this giant laser beam that it's not, you know, enormous, but it's very annoying. And so you have to kind of play around that. But the funny thing is, when you're playing the Divine and your ability goes off, you phase right through it and you can't take any damage. It's so unfair. I almost feel bad. This is my least favorite character for the SP regen though. I don't want it to be going off this often. Like, I hate not being able to move. Like, we get, let's see, right now, like, a handful of steps before I'm able to do anything. Then you're just kind of stuck. For me, I want to, like, move. But for others, you know, this might not even be a detriment at all. It just specifically bothers me. Ice Cool Barrage is great for single target damage. And I'll take that so it doubles the size. So the first relic for Ice Cool Barrage doubles the size. Ice Cool Barrage is a very, very strong skill. So I would definitely recommend it for anyone that's looking for an ability to kill bosses, to clear out mobs. As you level up Ice Cool Barrage, it is definitely one of the best abilities. Especially if you have duplication. If you're going with an ability that has duplication, so like say you have like Spectral Bow or something like that, so you're running duplication for the additional projectiles. Ice Cool Barrage is a projectile, and so you can make it to where in my Ice Cool Barrage video you'll see that, oh come on, give me Spectral Sword, I can close off this whole side of the map, the complete left side. Ice Cools can hit the whole thing. Nothing will be able to walk through there. It's absolutely bonkers. Look at that damage from Ice Cool Barrage. So good. Wow, it died and just gifted me that chest. Okay, so this is like the perfect situation. You have three swords, well, 2 swords and then yourself, casting the ability every single time. You're hitting for like 670 to 1,000 if you crit right now. Absolutely nothing is going to be able to survive this, especially at, you know, this minute. Obviously I'm super over leveled, from where I normally would be at this moment because of the double experience. But if I'm playing normally, I hit level 30 at 4 minutes. So I would probably be like level 40, 45 right now. So what I have is totally doable because I threw a lot of points into random things like Ascension and Spectral Bow, Colorless Glyph, etc., etc. Well, yeah, so the Divine, the only reason why I don't like the Divine more than the Cultist is because you're limited on how you could walk, basically. And I feel like the Cultist has just as good clear as the Divine does. So since I can't walk, I feel like that's such a pain. But the Divine itself, definitely one of the top DPS characters. Its ability is very strong. Spectral Sword is basically made for it. So for, 100% requirements for this build, I would just say SP regen and item pickup range. Those are the only two things I think you really need to have. And then maybe 1 point in Spectral Sword. You don't need to max it out if you don't want to, but I don't see any reason not to, because then you'll be casting 3 times. So those are really my only like hard requirements. One of the things about the Divine's ability is not too many passives really work towards it. So you could obviously do crit chance and you can do damage, but nothing else really impacts it because it's not a projectile or anything like that. So you can't really, add the amount. You can't make it go faster, etc., etc. And duration doesn't do anything on it either. So Ascension, always a good pickup. Increased damage. The damage passive is probably going to be pretty good. The EXP passive, I think, is always a 100% pickup, but it's not like a requirement, so I'm not going to list it as one of the requirements. Overall, definitely give the Divine a 9 or a 10, especially because it's really, in my opinion, one of the only classes that's able to use Berserker well, because you don't have to worry about damage really. So for me, the Divine, it's definitely number 1 or number 2. So the Cultist is my bias just because I like moving, but overall the Divine is an amazing class. So the second you can unlock it, I definitely recommend unlocking it because it will make you have a much easier time on both maps, especially Dry Marsh. Dry Marsh, since everything's coming from 360 degrees versus the Crossroads where there's only a couple directions they come from, the Divine's very strong on the Dry Marsh. But yeah, as always, guys, thanks so much. If you like the build, let me know down below. If you have any questions or ideas, definitely let me know. Like and subscribe as always, and I will see you guys on the next one.